Hello and welcome to Pure Potential, a space of solace, comfort, and wisdom for those who seek positive change in their lives. It is time for you to relax and recharge. Close your eyes. Whether you are sitting or lying down, imagine that you are in your favorite place in nature, by the ocean, on a mountaintop, in a flower-filled meadow, on the grass, in the shade of a sycamore tree, in a garden, counting stars in the moonlight. Breathe in the fresh air and feel all tension leave your body as you exhale. Relax completely. You are surrounded by the beauty of nature. Happiness fills your heart and expands in the center of your chest, in the same way your favorite flower begins as a bud and blossoms into spectacular perfection. Your body is filled with peace and calm. This is your time to be yourself. Listen and know that you are worthy. You are safe. You are good enough. You matter. You are loved. 101 Zen Stories compiled by Nyogen Senzaki. A cup of tea. Nan-in, a Japanese master during the Meiji era, which ran from 1868 to 1912, received a university professor who came to inquire about Zen. Nan-in served tea. He poured his visitor's cup full and then kept on pouring. The professor watched the overflow until he no longer could restrain himself. It is over full. No more will go in. Like this cup, Nan-in said, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup? Finding a diamond on a muddy road. Gudo was the emperor's teacher of his time. Nevertheless, he used to travel alone as a wandering mendicant. Once, when he was on his way to Edo, the cultural and political center of the shogunate, he approached a little village named Takenaka. It was evening, and a heavy rain was falling. Gudo was thoroughly wet. His straw sandals were in pieces. At a farmhouse near the village, he noticed 4 or 5 pairs of sandals in the window and decided to buy some dry ones. The woman who offered him the sandals, seeing how wet he was, invited him in to remain for the night at her home. Gudo accepted, thanking her. He entered and recited a sutra before the family shrine. He then was introduced to the woman's mother and to her children. Observing that the entire family was depressed, Gudo asked what was wrong. "My husband is a gambler and a drunkard," the housewife told him. "When he happens to win, he drinks and becomes abusive. When he loses, he borrows money from others. Sometimes, when he becomes thoroughly drunk, he does not come home at all. What can I do?" "I will help him," said Gudo. "Here is some money. Get me a gallon of fine wine and something good to eat. Then you may retire. I will meditate before the shrine." When the man of the house returned about midnight, quite drunk, he bellowed, "Hey, wife, I am home. Have you something for me to eat?" "I have something for you," said Gudo. "I happened to get caught in the rain, and your wife kindly asked me to remain here for the night. In return, I have bought some wine and fish, so you might as well have them." The man was delighted. He drank the wine at once and laid himself down on the floor. Gudo sat in meditation beside him. In the morning, when the husband awoke, he had forgotten about the previous night. "Who are you? Where do you come from?" he asked Gudo, who was still meditating. "I am Gudo of Kyoto, and I am going on to Edo," replied the Zen master. The man was utterly ashamed. He apologized profusely to the teacher of his emperor. Gudo smiled. "Everything in this life is impermanent," he explained. "Life is very brief. If you keep on gambling and drinking, you will have no time left to accomplish anything else, and you will cause your family to suffer too." The perception of the husband awoke as if from a dream. "You are right," he declared. "How can I ever repay you for this wonderful teaching? Let me see you off and carry your things a little way." "If you wish," assented Gudo. The two started out. After they had gone 3 miles, Gudo told him to return. "Just another 5 miles," he begged Gudo. They continued on. "You may return now," suggested Gudo. "After another 10 miles," the man replied. "Return now," said Gudo, when the 10 miles had passed. "I am going to follow you all the rest of my life," declared the man. Modern Zen teachers in Japan spring from the lineage of a famous master who was the successor of Gudo. His name was Munan, the man who never turned back. Is that so? The Zen master Hakyun was praised by his neighbors as one living a pure life. A beautiful Japanese girl whose parents owned a food store lived near him. Suddenly, without any warning, her parents discovered she was with child. This made her parents very angry. She would not confess who the man was, but after much harassment, at last named Hakun. In great anger, the parents went to the master. Is that so? Was all he would say. After the child was born, it was brought to Hakun. By this time he had lost his reputation, which did not trouble him, but he took very good care of the child. He obtained milk from his neighbors and everything else the little one needed. A year later, the girl mother could stand it no longer. She told her parents the truth, that the real father of the child was a young man who worked in the fish market. The mother and father of the girl at once went to Hakun to ask his forgiveness, to apologize at length, and to get the child back again. Hakun was willing. In yielding the child, all he said was, "Is that so?" Obedience. The Master Bankei's talks were attended not only by Zen students, but by persons of all ranks and sects. He never quoted sutras, nor indulged in scholastic dissertations. Instead, his words were spoken directly from his heart to the hearts of his listeners. His large audiences angered a priest of the Nichiren sect because the adherents had left to hear about Zen. The self-centered Nichiren priest came to the temple, determined to debate with Bankei. "Hey, Zen teacher," he called out. "Wait a minute. Whoever respects you will obey what you say. But a man like myself does not respect you. Can you make me obey you? Come up beside me, and I will show you," said Bankei. Proudly, the priest pushed his way through the crowd to the teacher. Bankei smiled. "Come over to my left side." The priest obeyed. "No," said Bankei. "We may talk better if you are on the right side. Step over here." The priest proudly stepped over to the right. "You see," observed Bankei, "you are obeying me, and I think you are a very gentle person. Now, sit down and listen. If you love, love openly. 20 monks and 1 nun, who was named Eshun, were practicing meditation with a certain Zen master. Eshun was very pretty, even though her head was shaved and her dress plain. Several monks secretly fell in love with her. One of them wrote her a love letter, insisting upon a private meeting. Eshun did not reply. The following day, the master gave a lecture to the group, and when it was over, Eshun arose. Addressing the one who had written her, she said, "If you really love me so much, come and embrace me now." No loving kindness. There was an old woman in China who had supported a monk for over 20 years. She had built a little hut for him and fed him while he was meditating. Finally, she wondered just what progress he had made in all this time. To find out, she obtained the help of a girl rich in desire. "Go and embrace him," she told her, and then ask him suddenly, "What now?" The girl called upon the monk and without much ado caressed him, asking him what he was going to do about it. "An old tree grows on a cold rock in winter," replied the monk somewhat poetically. "Nowhere is there any warmth." The girl returned and related what he had said. "To think I fed that fellow for 20 years," exclaimed the old woman in anger. "He showed no consideration for your need, no disposition to explain your condition. He need not have responded to passion, but at least he could have evidenced some compassion." She at once went to the hut of the monk and burned it down. Announcement. Tanzan wrote 60 postal cards on the last day of his life and asked an attendant to mail them. Then he passed away. The cards read, "I am departing from this world. This is my last announcement." Tanzan, July 27, 1892. Great waves. In the early days of the Meiji era, lived a well-known wrestler called Onami, Great Waves. Onami was immensely strong and knew the art of wrestling. In his private bouts, he defeated even his teacher, but in public was so bashful that his own pupils threw him. Onami felt he should go to a Zen master for help. How could you, a wandering teacher, was stopping in a little temple nearby. So Onami went to see him and told him of his great trouble. "Great waves is your name," the teacher advised. "So stay in this temple tonight. Imagine that you are those billows. You are no longer a wrestler who is afraid. You are those huge waves sweeping everything before them, swallowing all in their path. Do this, and you will be the greatest wrestler in the land." The teacher retired. Onami sat in meditation, trying to imagine himself as waves. He thought of many different things. Then gradually he turned more and more to the feeling of waves. As the night advanced, the waves became larger and larger. They swept away the flowers in their vases. Even the Buddha in the shrine was inundated. Before dawn, the temple was nothing but the ebb and flow of an immense sea. In the morning, the teacher found Onami meditating, a faint smile on his face. He patted the wrestler's shoulder. "Now, nothing can disturb you," he said. "You are those waves. You will sweep everything before you." The same day, Onami entered the wrestling contests and won. After that, no one in Japan was able to defeat him. The moon cannot be stolen. Ryokan, a Zen master, lived the simplest kind of life in a little hut at the foot of a mountain. One evening, a thief visited the hut, only to discover there was nothing in it to steal. Ryokan returned and caught him. "You may have come a long way to visit me," he told the prowler, "and you should not return empty-handed. Please take my clothes as a gift." The thief was bewildered. He took the clothes and slunk away. Ryokan sat naked, watching the moon. "Poor fellow," he mused. "I wish I could give him this beautiful moon." The last poem of Hoshin. The Zen master Hoshin lived in China many years. Then he returned to the northeastern part of Japan, where he taught his disciples. When he was getting very old, he told them a story he had heard in China. This is the story. One year, on the 25th of December, Tokufu, who was very old, said to his disciples, "I am not going to be alive next year, so you fellows should treat me well this year." The pupils thought he was joking, but since he was a great-hearted teacher, each of them in turn treated him to a feast on succeeding days of the departing year. On the eve of the new year, Tokufu concluded, "You have been good to me. I shall leave you tomorrow afternoon when the snow has stopped." The disciples laughed. thinking he was aging and talking nonsense, since the night was clear and without snow. But at midnight, snow began to fall, and the next day they did not find their teacher about. They went to the meditation hall. There he had passed on. Hoshin, who related this story, told his disciples, "It is not necessary for a Zen master to predict his passing, but if he really wishes to do so, he can." "Can you?" someone asked. "Yes," answered Hoshin. "I will show you what I can do 7 days from now." None of the disciples believed him, and most of them had even forgotten the conversation when Hoshin next called them together. "7 days ago," he remarked, "I said I was going to leave you. It is customary to write a farewell poem, but I am neither poet nor calligrapher. Let one of you inscribe my last words." His followers thought he was joking, but one of them started to write. "Are you ready?" Hoshin asked. "Yes, sir," replied the writer. Then Hoshin dictated, "I came from brilliancy and return to brilliancy. What is this?" The poem was 1 line short of the customary 4. So the disciple said, "Master, we are 1 line short." Hoshin, with the roar of a conquering lion, shouted, "Ka!" and was gone. The story of Shunkai. The exquisite Shunkai, whose other name was Suzu, was compelled to marry against her wishes when she was quite young. Later, after this marriage had ended, she attended the university where she studied philosophy. To see Shunkai was to fall in love with her. Moreover, wherever she went, she herself fell in love with others. Love was with her at the university, and afterwards, when philosophy did not satisfy her, and she visited a temple to learn about Zen, the Zen students fell in love with her. Shunkai's whole life was saturated with love. At last in Kyoto, she became a real student of Zen. Her brothers in the sub-temple of Kenin praised her sincerity. One of them proved to be a congenial spirit and assisted her in the mastery of Zen. The abbot of Kenin, Mokurai, Silent Thunder, was severe. He kept the precepts himself and expected his priests to do so. In modern Japan, whatever zeal these priests have lost for Buddhism, they seem to have gained for their wives. Mokurai used to take a broom and chase the women away when he found them in any of his temples. But the more wives he swept out, the more seemed to come back. In this particular temple, the wife of the head priest became jealous of Shunkai's earnestness and beauty. Hearing the students praise her serious Zen made this wife squirm and itch. Finally, she spread a rumor about Shunkai and the young man who was her friend. As a consequence, he was expelled, and Shunkai was removed from the temple. I may have made the mistake of love, thought Shunkai, but the priest's wife shall not remain in the temple either, if my friend is to be treated so unjustly. Shunkai, the same night, with a can of kerosene, set fire to the 500-year-old temple and burned it to the ground. In the morning, she found herself in the hands of the police. A young lawyer became interested in her and endeavored to make her sentence lighter. "Do not help me," she told him. "I might decide to do something else, which would only imprison me again." At last, a sentence of 7 years was completed, and Shunkai was released from the prison, where the 60-year-old warden had become enamored of her. But now everyone looked upon her as a jailbird. No one would associate with her. Even the Zen people, who are supposed to believe in enlightenment, in this life and with this body, shunned her. Zen, Shunkai found, was one thing, and the followers of Zen quite another. Her relatives would have nothing to do with her. She grew sick, poor, and weak. She met a Shinsu priest who taught her the name of the Buddha of love, and in this, Shunkai found some solace and peace of mind. She passed away when she was still exquisitely beautiful and hardly 30 years old. She wrote her own story in a futile endeavor to support herself, and some of it she told to a woman writer, so it reached the Japanese people. Those who rejected Shunkai, those who slandered and hated her, now read of her life with tears of remorse. Happy Chinaman. Anyone walking about Chinatowns in America will observe statues of a stout fellow carrying a linen sack. Chinese merchants call him Happy Chinaman or Laughing Buddha. This Hote lived in the Tang dynasty. He had no desire to call himself a Zen master or to gather many disciples around him. Instead, he walked the streets with a big sack into which he would put gifts of candy, fruit, or donuts. These he would give to children who gathered around him in play. He established a kindergarten of the streets. Whenever he met a Zen devotee, he would extend his hand and say, "Give me 1 penny." Once, as he was about to play work, another Zen master happened along and inquired, "What is the significance of Zen?" Hote immediately plopped his sack down on the ground in silent answer. Then asked the other, "What is the actualization of Zen?" At once, the happy Chinaman swung the sack over his shoulder and continued on his way. A Buddha. In Tokyo, in the Meiji era, there lived 2 prominent teachers of opposite characteristics. One, Unsho, an instructor in Shingon, kept Buddha's precepts scrupulously. He never drank intoxicants, nor did he eat after 11 o'clock in the morning. The other teacher, Tanzan, a professor of philosophy at the Imperial University, never observed the precepts. When he felt like eating, he ate, and when he felt like sleeping in the daytime, he slept. One day, Unsho visited Tanzan, who was drinking wine at the time, not even a drop of which is supposed to touch the tongue of a Buddhist. "Hello, brother," Tanzan greeted him. "Won't you have a drink?" "I never drink," exclaimed Unsho solemnly. "One who does not drink is not even human," said Tanzan. "Do you mean to call me inhuman just because I do not indulge in intoxicating liquids?" exclaimed Unsho in anger. "Then if I am not human, what am I?" "A Buddha," answered Tanzan. Muddy Road. Tanzan and Ekido were once traveling together down a muddy road. A heavy rain was still falling. Coming around a bend, they met a lovely girl in a silk kimono and sash, unable to cross the intersection. "Come on, girl," said Tanzan at once. Lifting her in his arms, he carried her over the mud. Ekido did not speak again until that night, when they reached a lodging temple. Then he no longer could restrain himself. "We monks don't go near females," he told Tanzan, "especially not young and lovely ones. It is dangerous. Why did you do that?" "I left the girl there," said Tanzan. "Are you still carrying her?" Shoun and His Mother. Shoun became a teacher of Soto Zen. When he was still a student, his father passed away, leaving him to care for his old mother. Whenever Shoun went to a meditation hall, he always took his mother with him, since she accompanied him when he visited monasteries. He could not live with the monks. So he would build a little house and care for her there. He would copy sutras, Buddhist verses, and, in this manner, receive a few coins for food. When Shoun bought fish for his mother, the people would scoff at him, for a monk is not supposed to eat fish. But Shoun did not mind. His mother, however, was hurt to see the others laugh at her son. Finally, she told Shoun, "I think I will become a nun. I can be a vegetarian too." She did, and they studied together. Shoun was fond of music and was a master of the harp, which his mother also played. On full moon nights, they used to play together. One night, a young lady passed by their house and heard music. Deeply touched, she invited Shoun to visit her the next evening and play. He accepted the invitation. A few days later, he met the young lady on the street and thanked her for her hospitality. Others laughed at him. He had visited the house of a woman of the streets. One day, Shun left for a distant temple to deliver a lecture. A few months afterwards, he returned home to find his mother dead. Friends had not known where to reach him, so the funeral was then in progress. Shoun walked up and hit the coffin with his staff. "Mother, your son has returned," he said. "I am glad to see you have returned, son," he answered for his mother. "Yes, I am glad too," Shoun responded. Then he announced to the people about him, "The funeral ceremony is over. You may bury the body." When Shoun was old, he knew his end was approaching. He asked his disciples to gather around him in the morning, telling them he was going to pass on at noon. Burning incense before the picture of his mother and his old teacher, he wrote a poem. "For 56 years I lived as best I could, making my way in this world. Now the rain has ended, the clouds are clearing. The blue sky has a full moon." His disciples gathered about him, reciting a sutra, and Shoun passed on during the invocation. Not far from Buddhahood, a university student, while visiting Gasan, asked him, "Have you even read the Christian Bible?" "No, read it to me," said Gasan. The student opened the Bible and read from St. Matthew. "And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you, that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Gasan said, whoever uttered those words, I consider an enlightened man. The student continued reading, Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth. And to him that knocketh it shall be opened. Gasan remarked, That is excellent. Whoever said that is not far from Buddhahood. Stingy in teaching. A young physician in Tokyo named Kusada met a college friend who had been studying Zen. The young doctor asked him what Zen was. I cannot tell you what it is, the friend replied. But one thing is certain. If you understand Zen, you will not be afraid to die. That's fine, said Kusada. I will try it. Where can I find a teacher? Go to the master Nan-in, the friend told him. So Kusada went to call on Nan-in. He carried a dagger 9.5 inches long. To determine whether or not the teacher was afraid to die. When Nan-in saw Kusada, he exclaimed, Hello, friend, how are you? We haven't seen each other for a long time. This perplexed Kusada, who replied, We have never met before. That's right, answered Nan-in. I mistook you for another physician who is receiving instruction here. With such a beginning, Kusada lost his chance to test the master, so reluctantly he asked if he might receive Zen instruction. Nan-in said, Zen is not a difficult task. If you are a physician, treat your patients with kindness. That is Zen. Kusada visited Nan-in 3 times. Each time, Nan-in told him the same thing. A physician should not waste time around here. Go home and take care of your patients. It was not yet clear to Kusada how such teaching could remove the fear of death. So, on his 4th visit, he complained, My friend told me, when one learns Zen, one loses the fear of death. Each time I come here, all you tell me is to take care of my patients. I know that much. If that is your so-called Zen, I am not going to visit you anymore. Nan-in smiled and patted the doctor. I have been too strict with you. Let me give you a koan. He presented Kusada with Joshu's mu to work over. which is the first mind-enlightening problem in the book called The Gateless Gate. Kusuda pondered this problem of Mu, meaning no thing, for 2 years. At length he thought he had reached certainty of mind. But his teacher commented, "You are not in yet." Kusuda continued in concentration for another 1.5 years. His mind became placid. Problems dissolved. No thing became the truth. He served his patients well, and without even knowing it, he was free from concern over life and death. Then, when he visited Nanin, his old teacher just smiled. A parable. Buddha told a parable in a sutra. A man traveling across a field encountered a tiger. He fled, the tiger after him. Coming to a precipice, he caught hold of the root of a wild vine and swung himself down over the edge. The tiger sniffed at him from above. Trembling, the man looked down to where, far below, another tiger was waiting to eat him. Only the vine sustained him. 2 mice, one white and one black, little by little started to gnaw away the vine. The man saw a luscious strawberry near him. Grasping the vine with one hand, he plucked the strawberry with the other. How sweet it tasted! The first principle. When one goes to Obaku Temple in Kyoto, he sees carved over the gate the words "the first principle." The letters are unusually large, and those who appreciate calligraphy always admire them as being a masterpiece. They were drawn by Kosen 200 years ago. When the master drew them, he did so on paper, from which the workman made the large carving in wood. As Kosen sketched the letters, a bold pupil was with him, who had made several gallons of ink for the calligraphy and who never failed to criticize his master's work. "That is not good," he told Kosen after his first effort. "How is this one? Poor, worse than before," pronounced the pupil. Kosen patiently wrote one sheet after another until 84 first principles had accumulated, still without the approval of the pupil. Then, when the young man stepped outside for a few moments, Kosen thought, "Now, this is my chance to escape his keen eye," and he wrote hurriedly, with a mind free from distraction. The first principle. "A masterpiece," pronounced the pupil. A mother's advice. Jiun, a shogun master, was a well-known Sanskrit scholar of the Tokugawa era. When he was young, he used to deliver lectures to his brother's students. His mother heard about this and wrote him a letter. "Son, I do not think you became a devotee of the Buddha because you desired to turn into a walking dictionary for others. There is no end to information and commentation, glory and honor. I wish you would stop this lecture business. Shut yourself up in a little temple in a remote part of the mountain. Devote your time to meditation and in this way attain true realization. The sound of one hand. The master of Kenin Temple was Mokurai, Silent Thunder. He had a little protege named Toyo, who was only 12 years old. Toyo saw the older disciples visit the master's room each morning and evening to receive instruction in sanzen or personal guidance, in which they were given koans to stop mind wandering. Toyo wished to do sanzen also. "Wait a while," said Mokurai. "You are too young." But the child insisted, so the teacher finally consented. In the evening, little Toyo went at the proper time to the threshold of Mokurai's sanzen room. He struck the gong to announce his presence, bowed respectfully 3 times outside the door, and went to sit before the master in respectful silence. "You can hear the sound of 2 hands when they clap together," said Mokurai. "Now show me the sound of 1 hand." Toyo bowed and went to his room to consider this problem. From his window, he could hear the music of the geishas. "Ah, I have it," he proclaimed. The next evening, when his teacher asked him to illustrate the sound of 1 hand, Toyo began to play the music of the geishas. "No, no," said Mokurai. "That will never do. That is not the sound of 1 hand. You've not got it at all." Thinking that such music might interrupt, Toyo moved his abode to a quiet place. He meditated again. What can the sound of 1 hand be? He happened to hear some water dripping. "I have it," imagined Toyo. When he next appeared before his teacher, he imitated dripping water. "What is that?" asked Mokurai. "That is the sound of dripping water, but not the sound of 1 hand. Try again." In vain Toyo meditated to hear the sound of 1 hand. He heard the sighing of the wind, but the sound was rejected. He heard the cry of an owl. This was also refused. The sound of 1 hand was not the locusts. For more than 10 times, Toyo visited Mokurai with different sounds. all were wrong. For almost a year, he pondered what the sound of one hand might be. At last, Toyo entered true meditation and transcended all sounds. I could collect no more, he explained later. So I reached the soundless sound. Toyo had realized the sound of one hand. My heart burns like fire. Soyen Shaku, the first Zen teacher to come to America, said, "My heart burns like fire, but my eyes are as cold as dead ashes." He made the following rules, which he practiced every day of his life. In the morning, before dressing, light incense and meditate. Retire at a regular hour. Partake of food at regular intervals. Eat with moderation and never to the point of satisfaction. Receive a guest with the same attitude you have when alone. When alone, maintain the same attitude you have in receiving guests. Watch what you say, and whatever you say, practice it. When an opportunity comes, do not let it pass you by, yet always think twice before acting. Do not regret the past, look to the future. Have the fearless attitude of a hero and the loving heart of a child. Upon retiring, sleep as if you had entered your last sleep. Upon awakening, leave your bed behind you instantly, as if you had cast away a pair of old shoes. Eshun's departure. When Eshun the Zen nun was past 60 and about to leave this world, she asked some monks to pile up wood in the yard. Seating herself firmly in the center of the funeral pyre, she had it set fire around the edges. "O nun," shouted one monk, "is it hot in there?" "Such a matter would concern only a stupid person like yourself," answered Eshun. The flames arose and she passed away. Reciting Sutras. A farmer requested a Tendai priest to recite sutras for his wife who had died. After the recitation was over, the farmer asked, "Do you think my wife will gain merit from this?" "Not only your wife, but all sentient beings will benefit from the recitation of sutras," answered the priest. "If you say all sentient beings will benefit," said the farmer, "my wife may be very weak, and others will take advantage of her, getting the benefit she should have. So please recite sutras just for her." The priest explained that it was the desire of a Buddhist to offer blessings and wish merit for every living being. "That is a fine teaching," concluded the farmer. but please make one exception. I have a neighbor who is rough and mean to me. Just exclude him from all those sentient beings. 3 days more. Suiwo, the disciple of Hakyun, was a good teacher. During one summer seclusion period, a pupil came to him from a southern island of Japan. Suiwo gave him the problem. Hear the sound of one hand. The pupil remained 3 years, but could not pass the test. One night, he came in tears to Suiwo. I must return south. In shame and embarrassment, he said, for I cannot solve my problem. Wait 1 week more and meditate constantly, advised Suiwo. Still no enlightenment came to the pupil. Try for another week, said Suiwo. The pupil obeyed, but in vain. Still another week, yet this was of no avail. In despair, the student begged to be released, but Suiwo requested another meditation of 5 days. They were without result. Then he said, meditate for 3 days longer. Then, if you fail to attain enlightenment, you had better kill yourself. On the 2nd day, the pupil was enlightened. Trading dialogue for lodging. Provided he makes and wins an argument about Buddhism with those who live there, any wandering monk can remain in a Zen temple. If he is defeated, he has to move on. In a temple in the northern part of Japan, 2 brother monks were dwelling together. The elder one was learned, but the younger one was stupid and had but one eye. A wandering monk came and asked for lodging, properly challenging them to a debate about the sublime teaching. The elder brother, tired that day from much studying, told the younger one to take his place. Go and request the dialogue in silence, he cautioned. So the young monk and the stranger went to the shrine and sat down. Shortly afterwards, the traveller rose and went in to the elder brother and said, Your young brother is a wonderful fellow. He defeated me. Relate the dialogue to me, said the elder one. Well, explained the traveller, first I held up one finger, representing Buddha, the Enlightened One. So he held up 2 fingers, signifying Buddha and his teaching. I held up 3 fingers, representing Buddha, his teaching, and his followers, living the harmonious life. Then he shook his clenched fist in my face, indicating that all 3 come from one realization. Thus he won, and so I have no right to remain here. With this, the traveller left. Where is that fellow? Asked the younger one, running in to his elder brother. I understand you won the debate. Won nothing. I'm going to beat him up. Tell me the subject of the debate, asked the elder one. Why, the minute he saw me, he held up one finger, insulting me by insinuating that I have only one eye. Since he was a stranger, I thought I would be polite to him. So I held up two fingers, congratulating him that he has two eyes. Then the impolite wretch held up three fingers, suggesting that between us we only have three eyes. So I got mad and started to punch him, but he ran out, and that ended it. The Voice of Happiness. After Bankei had passed away, a blind man who lived near the master's temple told a friend, "Since I am blind, I cannot watch a person's face, so I must judge his character by the sound of his voice. Ordinarily, when I hear someone congratulate another upon his happiness or success, I also hear a secret tone of envy. When condolence is expressed for the misfortune of another, I hear pleasure and satisfaction, as if the one consoling was really glad there was something left to gain in his own world. In all my experience, however, Bankei's voice was always sincere. Whenever he expressed happiness, I heard nothing but happiness, and whenever he expressed sorrow, sorrow was all I heard. Open your own treasure house. Daiju visited the master Baso in China. Baso asked, "What do you seek?" "Enlightenment," replied Daiju. "You have your own treasure house. Why do you search outside?" Baso asked. Daiju inquired, "Where is my treasure house?" Baso answered, "What you are asking is your treasure house." Daiju was delighted. Ever after he urged his friends, "Open your own treasure house and use those treasures." No water, no moon. When the nun Chinuyo studied Zen under Buko of Engaku, she was unable to attain the fruits of meditation for a long time. At last, one moonlit night, she was carrying water in an old pail bound with bamboo. The bamboo broke, and the bottom fell out of the pail. And at that moment, Chiyono was set free. In commemoration, she wrote a poem. In this way and that, I tried to save the old pail. since the bamboo strip was weakening and about to break, until at last the bottom fell out. No more water in the pail, no more moon in the water. Calling card. Keichu, the great Zen teacher of the Meiji era, was the head of Tofuku, a cathedral in Kyoto. One day, the governor of Kyoto called upon him for the first time. His attendant presented the card of the governor, which read, Kitagaki, Governor of Kyoto. I have no business with such a fellow, said Keichu to his attendant. Tell him to get out of here. The attendant carried the card back with apologies. That was my error, said the governor, and with a pencil he scratched out the words Governor of Kyoto. Ask your teacher again. Oh, is that Kitagaki? Exclaimed the teacher when he saw the card. I want to see that fellow. Everything is best. When Banzan was walking through a market, he overheard a conversation between a butcher and his customer. Give me the best piece of meat you have, said the customer. Everything in my shop is the best, replied the butcher. You cannot find here any piece of meat that is not the best. At these words, Banzan became enlightened. Inch time, foot gem. A lord asked Takuan, a Zen teacher, to suggest how he might pass the time. He felt his days very long, attending his office and sitting stiffly to receive the homage of others. Takuan wrote 8 Chinese characters and gave them to the man. Not twice this day, inch time, foot gem. This day will not come again. Each minute is worth a priceless gem. Mokusen's hand. Mokusen Hiki was living in a temple in the province of Tamba. One of his adherents complained of the stinginess of his wife. Mokusen visited the adherent's wife and showed her his clenched fist before her face. What do you mean by that? Asked the surprised woman. Suppose my fist was always like that. What would you call it? He asked. Deformed, replied the woman. Then he opened his hand flat in her face and asked, Suppose it was always like that. What then? Another kind of deformity, said the wife. If you understand that much, finished Mokusen, you are a good wife. Then he left. After his visit, the wife helped her husband to distribute as well as to save. A smile in his lifetime. Mokugen was never known to smile until his last day on earth. When his time came to pass away, he said to his faithful ones, "You have studied under me for more than 10 years. Show me your real interpretation of Zen. Whoever expresses this most clearly shall be my successor and receive my robe and bowl." Everyone watched Mokugen's severe face, but no one answered. Encho, a disciple who had been with his teacher for a long time, moved near the bedside. He pushed forward the medicine cup a few inches. This was his answer to the command. The teacher's face became even more severe. "Is that all you understand?" he asked. Encho reached out and moved the cup back again. A beautiful smile broke over the features of Mokugen. "You rascal," he told Encho. "You worked with me 10 years and have not yet seen my whole body. Take the robe and bowl. They belong to you." Every minute Zen. Zen students are with their masters at least 2 years before they presume to teach others. Nan-in was visited by Tenno, who, having passed his apprenticeship, had become a teacher. The day happened to be rainy, so Tenno wore wooden clogs and carried an umbrella. After greeting him, Nan-in remarked, "I suppose you left your wooden clogs in the vestibule. I want to know if your umbrella is on the right or left side of the clogs." Tenno, confused, had no instant answer. He realized that he was unable to carry his Zen every minute. He became Nan-in's pupil, and he studied 6 more years to accomplish his every minute Zen. Flower shower. Subhuti was Buddha's disciple. He was able to understand the potency of emptiness, the viewpoint that nothing exists except in its relationship of subjectivity and objectivity. One day, Subhuti, in a mood of sublime emptiness, was sitting under a tree. Flowers began to fall about him. "We are praising you for your discourse on emptiness," the gods whispered to him. "But I have not spoken of emptiness," said Subhuti. "You have not spoken of emptiness? We have not heard emptiness," responded the gods. "This is true emptiness." And blossoms showered upon Subhuti as rain. Publishing the Sutras. Tetsugen, a devotee of Zen in Japan, decided to publish the sutras, which at that time were available only in Chinese. The books were to be printed with woodblocks in an edition of 7,000 copies, a tremendous undertaking. Tetsugen began by traveling and collecting donations for this purpose. A few sympathizers would give him 100 pieces of gold, but most of the time he received only small coins. He thanked each donor with equal gratitude. After 10 years, Tetsugen had enough money to begin his task. It happened that at that time, the Uji River overflowed. Famine followed. Tetsugen took the funds he had collected for the books and spent them to save others from starvation. Then he began again his work of collecting. Several years afterwards, an epidemic spread over the country. Tetsugen again gave away what he had collected to help his people. For a third time, he started his work. And after 20 years, his wish was fulfilled. The printing blocks which produced the first edition of sutras can be seen today in the Obaku Monastery in Kyoto. The Japanese tell their children that Tetsugen made 3 sets of sutras and that the first 2 invisible sets surpass even the last. Gisho's work. Gisho was ordained as a nun when she was 10 years old. She received training just as the little boys did. When she reached the age of 16, she traveled from one Zen master to another, studying with them all. She remained 3 years with Unzan, 6 years with Guke, but was unable to obtain a clear vision. At last, she went to the master Inzan. Inzan showed her no distinction at all on account of her sex. He scolded her like a thunderstorm. He cuffed her to awaken her inner nature. Gisho remained with Inzan 13 years, and then she found that which she was seeking. In her honor, Inzan wrote a poem. This nun studied 13 years under my guidance. In the evening, she considered the deepest koans. In the morning, she was wrapped in other koans. The Chinese nun, Tetsuma, surpassed all before her. And since Mujaku, none has been so genuine as this Gisho. Yet there are many more gates for her to pass through. She should receive still more blows from my iron fist. After Gisho was enlightened, she went to the province of Banshu, started her own Zen temple, and taught 200 other nuns until she passed away 1 year in the month of August. Sleeping in the daytime. The master Soyen Shaku passed from this world when he was 61 years of age. Fulfilling his life's work, he left a great teaching, far richer than that of most Zen masters. His pupils used to sleep in the daytime during midsummer, and while he overlooked this, he himself never wasted a minute. When he was but 12 years old, he was already studying Tendai philosophical speculation. One summer day, the air had been so sultry that little Soyen stretched his legs and went to sleep while his teacher was away. 3 hours passed, when suddenly waking, he heard his master enter, but it was too late. There he lay, sprawled across the doorway. "I beg your pardon, I beg your pardon," his teacher whispered, stepping carefully over Soyen's body as if it were that of some distinguished guest. After this, Soyen never slept again in the afternoon. In Dreamland, our schoolmaster used to take a nap every afternoon, related a disciple of Soyen Shaku. We children asked him why he did it, and he told us, "I go to Dreamland to meet the old sages, just as Confucius did. When Confucius slept, he would dream of ancient sages, and later tell his followers about them. It was extremely hot one day, so some of us took a nap. Our schoolmaster scolded us. We went to Dreamland to meet the ancient sages, the same as Confucius did," we explained. "What was the message from those sages?" our schoolmaster demanded. One of us replied, "We went to Dreamland and met the sages and asked them if our schoolmaster came there every afternoon. But they said they had never seen any such fellow." Joshu's Zen. Joshu began the study of Zen when he was 60 years old and continued until he was 80 when he realized Zen. He taught from the age of 80 until he was 120. A student once asked him, "If I haven't anything in my mind, what shall I do? Joshu replied, throw it out. But if I haven't anything, how can I throw it out? Continued the questioner. Well, said Joshu, then carry it out. The dead man's answer. When Mamiya, who later became a well-known preacher, went to a teacher for personal guidance, he was asked to explain the sound of one hand. Mamiya concentrated upon what the sound of one hand might be. You are not working hard enough, his teacher told him. You are too attached to food, wealth, things, and that sound. It would be better if you died. That would solve the problem. The next time Mamiya appeared before his teacher, he was again asked what he had to show regarding the sound of one hand. Mamiya at once fell over as if he were dead. You are dead, all right, observed the teacher. But how about that sound? I haven't solved that yet, replied Mamiya, looking up. Dead men do not speak, said the teacher. Get out. Zen in a beggar's life. Tosui was a well-known Zen teacher of his time. He had lived in several temples and taught in various provinces. The last temple he visited accumulated so many adherents that Tosui told them he was going to quit the lecture business entirely. He advised them to disperse and go wherever they desired. After that, no one could find any trace of him. 3 years later, one of his disciples discovered him living with some beggars under a bridge in Kyoto. He at once implored Tosui to teach him. If you can do as I do for even a couple of days, I might, Tosui replied. So the former disciple dressed as a beggar and spent the day with Tosui. The following day, one of the beggars died. Tosui and his pupil carried the body off at midnight and buried it on a mountainside. After that, they returned to their shelter under the bridge. Tosui slept soundly the remainder of the night, but the disciple could not sleep. When morning came, Tosui said, "We do not have to beg for food today. Our dead friend has left some over there." But the disciple was unable to eat a single bite of it. "I have said you could not do as I do," concluded Tosui. "Get out of here and do not bother me again. The thief who became a disciple. One evening, as Shichiri Kojun was reciting sutras, a thief with a sharp sword entered, demanding either money or his life. Shichiri told him, "Do not disturb me. You can find the money in that drawer." Then he resumed his recitation. A little while afterwards, he stopped and called, "Don't take it all. I need some to pay taxes with tomorrow." The intruder gathered up most of the money and started to leave. "Thank a person when you receive a gift," Shichiri added. The man thanked him and made off. A few days afterwards, the fellow was caught and confessed, among others, the offense against Shichiri. When Shichiri was called as a witness, he said, "This man is no thief, at least as far as I am concerned. I gave him money and he thanked me for it." After he had finished his prison term, the man went to Shichiri and became his disciple. Right and wrong. When Bankei held his seclusion weeks of meditation, pupils from many parts of Japan came to attend. During one of these gatherings, a pupil was caught stealing. The matter was reported to Bankei with the request that the culprit be expelled. Bankei ignored the case. Later, the pupil was caught in a similar act, and again Bankei disregarded the matter. This angered the other pupils, who drew up a petition asking for the dismissal of the thief, stating that otherwise they would all leave. When Bankei had read the petition, he called everyone before him. "You are wise brothers," he told them. "You know what is right and what is not right. You may go somewhere else to study if you wish. But this poor brother does not even know right from wrong. Who will teach him if I do not? I am going to keep him here, even if all the rest of you leave." A torrent of tears cleansed the face of the brother who had stolen. All desire to steal had vanished. How grass and trees become enlightened. During the Kamakura period, Shinkan studied Tendai 6 years, and then studied Zen 7 years. Then he went to China and contemplated Zen for 13 years more. When he returned to Japan, many desired to interview him and asked obscure questions. But when Shinkan received visitors, which was infrequently, he seldom answered their questions. One day, a 50-year-old student of Enlightenment said to Shinkan, "I have studied the Tendai school of thought since I was a little boy, but one thing in it I cannot understand. Tendai claims that even the grass and trees will become enlightened. To me, this seems very strange. Of what use is it to discuss how grass and trees become enlightened?" asked Shinkan. "The question is how you yourself can become so. Did you even consider that?" "I never thought of it that way," marveled the old man. "Then go home and think it over," finished Shinkan. The Stingy Artist. Geshen was an artist monk. Before he would start a drawing or painting, he always insisted upon being paid in advance, and his fees were high. He was known as the Stingy Artist. A geisha once gave him a commission for a painting. "How much can you pay?" inquired Geshen. "Whatever you charge," replied the girl, "but I want you to do the work in front of me." So, on a certain day, Geshen was called by the geisha. She was holding a feast for her patron. Geshen, with fine brushwork, did the painting. When it was completed, he asked the highest sum of his time. He received his pay. Then the geisha turned to her patron, saying, "All this artist wants is money. His paintings are fine, but his mind is dirty. Money has caused it to become muddy. Drawn by such a filthy mind, his work is not fit to exhibit. It is just about good enough for one of my petticoats." Removing her skirt, she then asked Geshen to do another picture on the back of her petticoat. "How much will you pay?" asked Geshen. "Oh, any amount," answered the girl. Geshen named a fancy price, painted the picture in the manner requested, and went away. It was learned later that Geshen had his reasons for desiring money. A ravaging famine often visited his province. The rich would not help the poor. So Geshen had a secret warehouse, unknown to anyone, which he kept filled with grain, prepared for these emergencies. From his village to the national shrine, the road was in very poor condition, and many travelers suffered while traversing it. He desired to build a better road. His teacher had passed away without realizing his wish to build a temple, and Geshen wished to complete this temple for him. After Geshen had accomplished his 3 wishes, he threw away his brushes and artist's materials, and retiring to the mountains, never painted again. Accurate proportion. Sen no Rikyu, a tea master, wished to hang a flower basket on a column. He asked a carpenter to help him, directing the man to place it a little higher or lower, to the right or left, until he had found exactly the right spot. "That's the place," said Sen no Rikyu finally. The carpenter, to test the master, marked the spot, and then pretended he had forgotten. Was this the place? Was this the place, perhaps? The carpenter kept asking, pointing to various places on the column. But so accurate was the tea master's sense of proportion that it was not until the carpenter reached the identical spot again that its location was approved. Black-nosed Buddha. A nun who was searching for enlightenment made a statue of Buddha and covered it with gold leaf. Wherever she went, she carried this golden Buddha with her. Years passed, and, still carrying her Buddha, the nun came to live in a small temple in a country where there were many Buddhas, each one with its own particular shrine. The nun wished to burn incense before her golden Buddha. Not liking the idea of the perfume straying to others, she devised a funnel through which the smoke would ascend only to her statue. This blackened the nose of the golden Buddha, making it especially ugly. Ryonen's clear realization. The Buddhist nun known as Ryonen was born in 1797. She was a granddaughter of the famous Japanese warrior Shingen. Her poetical genius and alluring beauty were such that at 17 she was serving the Empress as one of the ladies of the court. Even at such a youthful age, fame awaited her. The beloved Empress died suddenly, and Ryonen's hopeful dreams vanished. She became acutely aware of the impermanence of life in this world. It was then that she desired to study Zen. Her relatives disagreed, however, and practically forced her into marriage. With a promise that she might become a nun after she had borne 3 children, Ryonen assented. Before she was 25, she had accomplished this condition. Then her husband and relatives could no longer dissuade her from her desire. She shaved her head, took the name of Ryonen, which means to realize clearly, and started on her pilgrimage. She came to the city of Edo and asked Tetsuya to accept her as a disciple. At one glance, the master rejected her because she was too beautiful. Ryonen went to another master, Hakuo. Hakuo refused her for the same reason, saying that her beauty would only make trouble. Ryonen obtained a hot iron and placed it against her face. In a few moments, her beauty had vanished forever. Hakuo then accepted her as a disciple. Commemorating this occasion, Ryonen wrote a poem on the back of a little mirror. In the service of my empress, I burned incense to perfume my exquisite clothes. Now, as a homeless mendicant, I burn my face to enter a Zen temple. When Ryonen was about to pass from this world, she wrote another poem. 66 times have these eyes beheld the changing scene of autumn. I have said enough about moonlight. Ask no more. Only listen to the voice of pines and cedars when no wind stirs. Thank you for listening and taking the time for yourself. We wish you peace, health and well-being, happiness, synchronicity, love and laughter.